Hey, everybody, on this week's episode of Movie Time, we're going to be talking about Cocaine Bear, an unbelievable little story from the 80s turned into this insane and obscene type of movie. Is it up to snuff with expectations, or does it leave a little bad taste in your mouth with maybe some post nasally drip? Blake and I will talk about it, so keep watching to find out our thoughts and review on the movie. All you got to do is sit back, relax, grab your favorite snack. You know what time it is. It's time for Movie Time, coming at you right now. Hey, what's up, everybody? We are back. The Movie Bros are back in the house with another episode of Movie Time. Got myself, Rene, LOWKEY, GEEK here, and Blake the Wolf. What's going on, my brother?
Well, I just need a little supplies to get ready. Don't worry. Just
Oh, am I
you can't hear
am
that,
I
can you? Did that
am I showing?
that
Am
come
I
through?
showing?
I want to make sure that didn't it.
No, I
I thought
didn't.
did
No,
I hit mute? I want that to be on
you
the
know,
air, but
no one heard anything. But am I showing right now? No, right?
yeah, you got a little bit of white or
Shit.
gray. Okay.
Okay.
Oh wait, no, that's just your mustache. No, okay, that's your mustache. Yeah.
It could be a mixture of both. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, well, sorry, we're prepping before we hit record, so we got to get ourselves in the mood. We got to get ourselves energized because this week we're talking about Cocaine
Okay.
Bear. Oh my God, everyone's going nuts for this movie. Are they? I don't know, but we definitely went nuts for it. It
Because
was
it's
one
coming
of those
out.
movies that when it
Yeah.
was announced, I said it to you, Blake. I'm sure I said it in an episode or two that I'm eagerly anticipating this movie because it could be either insanely crazy in a good way or insanely crazy in an extremely bad way. It could go either way. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but thank you so much for tuning in and joining us on this episode. Again, if you are brand new to this channel and brand new to seeing us on the screen yapping our mouths off like crazy, well, it's because no, we're not high on cocaine, or are we? We don't know. We're not going to tell you. But every week, Movie Time is a movie review podcast where the two of us, we call ourselves the Movie Bros, get together and bullshit and talk about movies. So if you like this and you want to see more of this type of content, all you got to do is hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. If you are inclined to do so, hit that notification bell so that you could get notified every time a new video is uploaded. For you audio listeners out there, thank you so much for listening and tuning in. If you want an audio version of this show, you can find it on the LOWKEY GEEK podcast channel on your podcast platform of choice, where you can download this and all of the other stuff that we have up there. And if it prompts you, leave a great rating, because karma can go a long way. And as we saw in this movie, karma went in so many different ways depending
Oh
on
my
which
gosh.
side of the thing you're on, right?
Yeah. No kidding. So I think what Renee is saying is if you do not like and subscribe, then a random bear will eat your intestines.
Yeah. Well, just eat your face off,
Yeah.
basically.
Oh, there's
And
a lot of
yeah.
different ways that a bear can
Oh,
take care of a human, as we'll get into.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But before we get into that, again, we always love to play catch up and all that. So, this past week, I was able to catch up on two things, especially now that we're really creeping towards the Oscar ceremony, and you and I were both playing catch up on things we haven't seen yet. One of the things I definitely want to bring up and mention was actually thanks to you, because normally I don't really watch the animated shorts, except for like the occasional Pixar short that will pop up on Disney Plus or whatever the case is. But you sent me pretty much this one short that you said I had to check out,
You
and
gotta watch this one. This is
yeah,
a for you. You need to see this.
totally, yeah. You said if there was one that you were going to have to check out, this is the one you have
Yeah.
to. And it was called "An Ostrich Told Me the World Is Fake, and I Think I Believe It." Talk about an insanely long title, but it's very well put for this type of short. I loved it, dude. I mean,
Loved
we
it.
we were able to talk about it a couple days ago, and this was the way it was so meta, the way it was kind of filmed. um, Seeing them work on the short you're watching in a monitor, but you see them working on it on the background, and basically him realizing that, wait a minute, am I part of like a production? Am I part of something? Because all this kind, and you could watch it for free on is it Vimeo?
There, yeah, even the artist put it up on Vimeo. The actual creator,
Vimeo.
is, from what I could tell, yeah,
Yeah,
Vimeo.
so I'll leave a link in the description if you want to check it out. I highly recommend you check this out because it is so well done. I thought the story was really really smart. It was brilliant. The interaction with the human hand that is like
Yeah.
kind of putting everything together was so smart and brilliant. If anything, it kind of reminds me of um like Mr. Bill back in the old
Oh
SNL
yeah,
classic days.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Good call.
But this was definitely much more modernized, and I love how it really plays on the whole. Is this real? Is this fake? You know, you have like glitches happening in his real world. But you know, in reality, obviously they're on a small little set and all that, and it was just so really smart and so funny, and very cute. And at the end of the day, it was just basically a commercial for like a furniture company, which I thought it was pretty damn hilarious. But yeah, definitely have to check it out. So I thank you again for letting me know about that. And then I finally got to see All Quiet on the Western Front on Netflix. I had to make sure I had enough time because it is a long movie. It's like almost 3 hours long. But now I totally understand why it got all those Oscar nominations because for a Netflix movie that's a foreign produced movie, and has really, at least to my knowledge, no main stars with the exception of Daniel Bruhl. I
And
thought
small
it
role too.
was
Like he's
very
more
small
cameo
role.
level.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was so good and so well done, so well produced, so well directed. The sound was amazing, you know, and it's your typical you know, the horrors and casualties of war and all that stuff like that. You know, you basically follow these group of boys from the beginning, but even starts before that because, you know, a soldier dies, his uniform gets repurposed and one of the boys ends up getting it. Once you see that, you already see the tone that's being set, and it's like the dread of war and everything like that. And my God, it was so well done. It's not a movie that I think I could see again, to be honest with you, because of like how
Yeah.
heavy the subject matter is. But wow, it was very, very well done and touching. And I think at one point, you know, when the soundtrack, because the soundtrack, this is interesting thing where it's almost like rock, kind of synthesized rock. It was like burr, burr. I thought it was, you know, Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross doing the soundtrack, but it's not. It's some other person. But it had that same
The score was
familiarity.
special. Yeah.
Yeah, it really
There's a reason why
was.
it's in award season and kind
Yeah.
of came out of nowhere.
Yeah, it was just so well done. So I am so happy I saw it. I know you've seen it yourself, right? Like, what did you think about it? Because we didn't have a chance to really talk about that.
I always say there's a million war movies. There are very few World War One
Yeah.
movies, and I think it's, to my mind, one of the most cinematic like
Yes.
wars that there is.
Hmm.
1917 got it a few years
Hmm.
ago, and then this one. But there really aren't very many. I thought it was a special movie. There is the version of a war movie where they kind of phone it in. This is not that. This is definitely a
Yeah.
more spectacular and harrowing war movie than even by war movie comparisons. So overall, I understand why it's getting the love it's getting. I don't have it as like a one of my favorites from the year, but I understand why people would. There's also
Hmm.
this weird thing since we're getting towards the Oscars where there's usually one war movie, and then there's these different stats people put together. If there's two war movies, and they usually split votes, but because like war movie is its own kind of thing that automatically gets like respect from politically minded people, more old school view. Like it's got just enough different categories of folks that it hits. Those usually do pretty well, and there's almost always at least one, and this is the one from this year because there weren't really any other big competitors in that category
No.
to my mind.
Yeah.
Like there's a way you could look at it like Woman King should have been in there, but we're talking more like America or like World War One, World War Two, Vietnam, up to more modern ones where like Hurt Locker does well, Zero Dark 30. Like there's a lot of war movies. Is Avatar 2 a war movie? That's for another episode. But anyway, yeah, dude,
Space
loved
War.
it. It was, yeah. Um, it was intense, but in a very like cinematically impressive way. So I'm glad you
Yeah.
finally got to see that for sure.
Yeah. No, I'm glad I took the
It,
time to watch it. Yeah.
especially after it did so well at the BAFTAs, which I'm gonna, that might be the reason you got into it. But that
Yeah.
it's one that it's more. I think it's going to do better at the BAFTAs and the Oscars, but we'll see. It could be one of those like, what do you know? It's Best Picture kind of thing. Like, it definitely still has momentum from um, just right before the nominations were announced. It was
Sure.
picking that up, and they got a bunch more nominations than people were expecting,
Yeah.
and now like it could be announced as Best Picture next month. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, at least for the international category for sure. Like I think it has
Oh,
like a strong shot
basically
at
locked.
taking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so those were the two things I caught up on this past week. What about you? Watch anything interesting?
Finally saw "Don't Worry, Darling," which after all the press
Oh,
tour nonsense of it all,
okay.
it kind of got the movie actually was the backstory, or
Yeah.
like it got shelved after that.
Yeah.
Because and I would say like the press tour was definitely more entertaining, but I liked it overall. It was kind of exactly what I thought it would be, and a weird, trippy, mind like Stepford Wivesy type
Hmm.
situation. So overall, I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. Um, I finally saw 20 Feet from Stardom, the Oscar documentary
Oh
winner from
yeah.
a few years ago. It was actually really good and
Yeah.
entertaining. I thought there's sad parts and there's like, I guess in the drama of it, but it was definitely hummed more than I thought it would. It went like, no pun intended, like it was a easy watch,
Hmm.
easier watch than I thought it'd be. Because sometimes those documentaries can feel clunky and more educational.
Yeah.
But it was definitely entertaining. The last thing I'll mention, which I think I mentioned to you the other day when we caught up in person, was the I'd gone through all the animated shorts. I watched those, which is why I recommended that one to you. They're all available for free online right now. They're all like 10 minutes. One of them's 13 minutes. It is a great way to spend an hour or
Yeah.
so. All of them, to my mind, were damn good. Um, but then part of why I was doing that was I was rewatching all the old Marcel the Shell short films that they'd made years ago that went viral, and then even see some of those in the new Marcel movie, which is nominated for animated. I'd given it more of a bad rap last year. I was like, yeah, it was good. You loved it. I'm glad I rewatched it, and I knew I needed to. We talked about that
Hmm.
because I had expectations going into it. It may have been the day I saw it or the random mood. Like we always talk about, I always have you have to take any film opinion with a grain of salt, especially if you've only seen it one time. And there's some movies that don't age well. Like you rewatch it, you're like, oh well, it was only because it was surprising or shocking that I thought it was so good and had such a strong effect. Some movies are only meant to be watched one time.
Hmm.
This one, I definitely appreciated it more, and I think I understood more why you revered it so highly after seeing it. And we kind of did a reversal where I went into it more excited. You went into it a little less sure, a little less excited
Right.
than I was. And then we kind of did the flip, which is to be expected when you're playing the expectations game. So I'm glad
Right.
I rewatched it. Absolutely loved it. I'm now kind of rooting for it in the animated category. I'm guessing Pinocchio wins,
Yes.
but we will get to our Oscar predictions in future episodes. For now,
Yes.
we've got a beast to take down to tackle.
Yeah, before we handle the bare necessities of what we're going to be talking about,
Oh, damn it.
um I love the fact that you rewatched Marcel and that it hit you. Like, and again, it's also dependent on your state of mind and your mood. Like you could have been in a different mood the first time you saw it and all that. So it is a thing that really happens where a movie could be great, but you could be just in a crappy mood that day, and you're just like, nah, I'm not feeling this movie at all, right? And that actually plays along really well, I think, with the movie we're going to be talking about next, because if you're not in a happy-go-lucky type of mood, then this movie would probably be like, what the fuck? Like,
Yeah.
I don't get it. But if you're just like in a whatever type of mood and just like, hey, I'm just here to chill and all that, then this movie will probably hit you in the
Yep.
right spots, and you'll probably walk
Yep.
away like, I had the best time of my life and all that. So I'm glad you gave that movie a shot. Um, don't worry, darling. Since you never seen it, I've always wanted to talk to you about it, and we're not going to talk so deeply into it and all that. The one thing that really bothered me about that movie is, well, there were several things that I did. The inconsistencies throughout, which they don't really explain. Like,
Okay.
what was the deal with the airplane?
What about it?
okay, so there's a glitch, an airplane shows up, it disappears, or it crashes. They She was supposed to investigate it, and then they kind of just dropped it. So what was it real?
This
What
movie
was the
left
purpose?
some open holes, and I think to some degree, I think it's on purpose, and to some degree, like part of the problem with these kind of movies is you can only do so much explaining and world building, and
Yeah.
here's the logic of exactly how it works. And at some point, it would detract from the movie
Hmm.
if you did too much of that, because it doesn't really matter. The main thing that the movie is about is how women are held captive by
Sure.
society.
Yeah.
The movie is about this false reality and narrative and
Yeah.
red pilling and whatever, however you want to put it. So, like, the a movie like The Matrix does a pretty good job building it up, but even after 3 movies with a lot of explanation, including he meets the architect, and then but then you're rethinking the whole thing and then rethinking it. Like, we could get into that in Don't Worry, Darling.
Sure.
It's already
Yeah.
around 2 hours. I was pretty happy with, like, yeah, I don't know the answers, but still, you just kind of take them at face value. Of if you asked me to explain how that world, I wouldn't be able to get more than 2 sentences out without some serious conjecture.
Right.
I still enjoy. Actually thought Harry Styles did a damn good job. I know some
He
people
wasn't
were
bad.
ragging on his
He wasn't bad.
performance.
Yeah.
No, the acting was great. The casting overall
Yeah.
was great. Olivia Wilde did some solid directing. I understand that it's not fully satisfying, and I think I know why. Partially because of those holes are a little too
Yeah.
big. It's not really a mind fuck when you don't even set it up with what is happening in the first place. To where it's
Yeah.
hard to like mess with what people thought was real when they didn't never even you never even told them what was real and what wasn't.
Sure.
But I do enjoy those kind of movies, and I thought it was fun at least. I thought I would kind of throw it on in the background, and oh yeah, that's no. At some point, I was like fully like, oh my
Hmm.
gosh, are they gonna get her? So we won't
Yeah.
spoil it here or get much deeper, but yeah, overall
Yeah.
was better than I thought. I think I gave it like a 3.5 or 4 on Letterboxd, something
Okay.
like that.
Yeah, that's not terrible. Yeah, I would probably lean more towards the three. Three. You know, I don't do half ratings, so I probably do give it like a three
Ridiculous.
and all that.
Okay.
um, so did I ever explain fully why I don't want to do half ratings at all? It's
There's no half
it's
stepping.
oh, you just came in all muffled.
There is it because there's no
There you
half
go.
stepping? No, was it?
No, that's a good way. That's a
No, something for halfway crooks. I just feel like that's rare of hip hop.
no.
They're just so tough.
Because I'm trying to avoid the Rotten Tomatoes mistake. So, if for those of you who don't know, when you see a movie gets a rotten score or is fresh and all that, it's because they do an aggregate of all the ratings, and if it's 3 and above, or if it's above 3, then it's a fresh score. If it's a below 3, then it's a rotten. So if you have a lot of critics who gives the movie a 2.9, a
Huh.
2.8, a two and a
Huh.
half, you
Huh.
know, but they say it wasn't that bad, it still just qualifies it as rotten in their scoring
So
system.
weird. Because theirs
Yeah.
is out of 100. That doesn't. It's so weird.
I think it's that percent wise, it's out of 100. But when you're
Right.
a critic and you're rating it, you're giving it like within a 5-star rating. So if
Mhm.
you give it like a 2.5,
It's a
then
50.
that's automatic rotten based on their algorithm.
So it's just 60% or higher. It's like school passing
Yeah,
grade
yeah,
A B C D. If it's lower
yeah,
than 60%, okay.
yeah,
But okay. I think I get it. But if you
yeah.
were,
But
but you, there is no 2.9 on Letterbox. It's 2.5 or
no, no.
3. So it's
I'm
like
just saying
50
that.
or
I'm just saying
60.
that as an that's why I wouldn't do 2.5. For me, it's either going to be a 2, because if I give something a 2, that means I really didn't like it. That means
Right.
it's something that I didn't like, but maybe there was like a small aspect of it that I liked, right?
Mm.
But 2.5, I was
Same.
just like, what? Why fuck with it? It's like it's either a 2 or a 3. That means if I give it a 3, that means I liked it enough that I'd be like, all right, it wasn't that bad,
You're just trying to
right?
push it to one side or the other is kind of what you're saying,
Exactly,
right? Okay.
exactly. Yeah, just trying
Did
to
you do a
avoid that whole Rotten
3.5?
Tomatoes. No, no
Why?
halves, no halves.
Doesn't make. But
It's
why?
either 3 or 4 for me.
Like,
Yeah.
okay. Your logic definitely fell apart and has holes in it, just like Don't Worry,
No.
Darling. And I think we have
Oh
to be okay
well.
with that and move on. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Yes. Don't worry, darling. It'll be all right. But yeah, no, but to close off that conversation, yeah, no, the acting is the performances was actually really good. Like the Harry Styles minus the whole dance sequence on stage, I thought that was a little silly and a little long. I think they pushed that way too long than it should have been. But for me, Chris Pine was awesome in that movie. I
It
loved
worked.
him
Yeah,
so
it's a good
much.
role for
Yeah,
him for sure.
yeah. And I've always been a huge Florence Pugh fan. I mean, she doesn't
Whew,
do any wrong with me.
special.
So, oh yeah,
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 once in a generation talent.
yeah.
Unreal.
So good. So yeah, I'm glad you saw it. And like I said, I think if we saw it at the same time when it came out, that would have led to an interesting conversation where we could have dived so deep into it and all that stuff. But we're already past that point, and it's like what you said. You saw it. It is what it is. You're okay with it. I was okay with it, and move on from there. Yeah. But yeah, let us know if you've seen any of the movies we mentioned. If you have any thoughts or opinions on any of that stuff, we would love to hear your thoughts and opinions and everything there. But let's move on to the main topic here for the week, and that is Cocaina Bear. The adventures of, what do they call it? Pablo Escobar.
Oh my gosh, that's so good.
That's a real thing. So, for those of you who don't know, this movie is based on a brief moment in the 80s. I think 84, December of 84. That was basically a 1 day news cycle event, because um, you had a guy who was found on someone's driveway with a parachute that pretty much just fell out of the sky. And later on, it turns out that this guy was smuggling cocaine from, I forget where it was from, but he was coming into the States smuggling. He was a known smuggler and all that stuff like that. He had a co pilot. The co pilot survived, all that stuff. The plane crashed somewhere in the Carolinas or whatever the case is. But yeah, all the payload was dumped in Georgia, right? Um, some random bear got into a duffel bag, ate up the entire contents of the bag, which was all full of cocaine, and for the next couple of hours had the time of his life and was just like full on hyper energized. I mean, just think of like the biggest cocaine binge you've seen on TV or on screen. And this guy was like living his best life, or she was living his best life. I believe it was a female bear. And then just died of a cocaine overdose in matter of hours. So hopefully the bear went out on the biggest high of its life, just like no care in the world, just like, yeah, I'm doing top of the world, and then just crashed and everything just failed. The bear was found like a couple of weeks later by a random hunter. And they did an autopsy on the bear and they found out, yeah, cocaine died of OD because the contents of its stomach was just 99% cocaine, and that was it. So, but like I said, it was like a 1 day news cycle event. But somehow Elizabeth Banks said, you know what? I can turn this into a full length feature movie. And she did. And you know what? It worked for me. Why? Because they leaned into the absurdity of everything. And she extrapolated and made up these like crazy storylines for all of these random people who were not involved, but maybe one was involved, and just created this whole narrative out of this one news clipping. And I thought she did a really good job. I should have known that I would really like this movie even more so if I found out that Phil Lord and Chris Miller was producers on this film. Because again, if you are familiar with their sensibilities of their humor, like the Lego movie and all that stuff like that, then you know what you're getting yourself into. And yeah, this movie 100% worked for me. I thought it was comical in every sense, whether it's the dialogue, the personas of the people, because most of them are so dumb that they're funny. The crazy, gory violence, which was so over the top that it was comical, and I laughed a lot through most of that stuff. The characterization of the bear itself, it very much reminded me of like kind of like a Jurassic Park, like how the T-Rex is always the main hero or the main whatever villain, or the raptors, right? And somehow one will win at the end and they have their hero moment at the end, roaring into the distance and all that stuff like that. And that's pretty much how this movie ends. And now I'm not spoiling anything just yet. But then again, I feel like this is the type of movie that doesn't matter if you spoil it, because if you watch it regardless, you're still going to get the same impact if you
Whole
find out
plot
what's
was in the
happening or not.
trailer.
Yeah.
Bear does cocaine, messes people up.
Yeah.
Basically, there's like a little thing at the end where you're like, "Oh, will this person or bear win?"
Right.
So that's
Yeah.
about all. Which we'll save that for later, just in case you're
Yeah.
really holding out for our review before buying a ticket to Cocaine Bear. Which,
For
if you
sure.
haven't seen it already, I'm curious on the average audience reaction, how that'll
Yeah.
go. My theater was fully prepped and ready for the experience that was Cocaine Bear.
And
They
that's
were,
perfect.
yeah. I personally, I enjoyed it a lot. I laughed a lot. I had some
Hmm.
fist pumping, like, "Oh, that was
Yeah.
awesome! What a great kill!" moments. Um, the there was a some of the comedy was a little flat, and even though the audience was into it, there were some moments
Hmm.
that I think they were trying to get laughs, and there weren't really
Sure.
laughs. There's some things about the story, like why is the breakup thing there, and then Carrie Russell's dating life is in there, and there's like too many ancillary subplots in my mind
Hmm.
that don't carry through.
Right.
I think it could have been. I know that they're trying to extrapolate a full movie out of a two-paragraph news clipping,
Yeah.
but the movie could have delved more into certain things, or and streamlined it a little more to where they flesh out the mother-daughter relationship and less about, you know, Carrie Russell's dating, Ray Liotta's grandkid. Like, everyone kind of has extra relationships in the movie.
Hmm.
Early on, they're the couple who's hiking through nature. They talk about her brother's band, and it's going to be a fight between them because she doesn't like his brother's band. It was genuinely funny. I laughed. That was the first time I
Dude,
laughed in the
that
movie.
was like one of my favorite moments. Is that
Yep,
couple, like that couple? If they were to have a spin-off, like that
yep.
would be brilliant because they are hilarious as a couple.
That was the dude from Game of Thrones. If
Yeah,
I
yeah, the one with
recall,
the
yeah.
beard. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So great work with the casting there for sure.
Yep. Hmm.
Overall, like, I thought we were going to get a few different things like coming back around into the plot. No, it was pretty random. So I genuinely liked it. I think I gave it 4 stars on Letterboxd, but the there is a little too much clunk and a little too much, like, is it trying to be the pun, grisly, violent movie or stupid comedy? And I think just it has a few missteps where it's a little staggered at times
Sure.
between those two lanes.
Yeah.
There's a version of this movie which is kind of like what people really wanted from Snakes on a Plane, but then were disappointed because of the actual product. I think that might be a lot of people's reaction who aren't
Hmm.
looking for dumb, stupid, silly, it doesn't matter if it's good or bad kind of movie. Like, we're just going in to see whatever is on the screen. And if it's as long as the bear does cocaine and mauls at least 10 people, we're happy.
Yeah.
That said, my audience was super into it. Multiple applause moments. Like, it was exactly the moment that the studio would want for an advertising or a momentum campaign.
Yeah.
Then we're looking at the scores, and they're not that great all over. But of course, critics are going to be harsher on this movie than
Sure.
the fans, and the dumb fans aren't properly represented by critics. The ones who are okay with popcorn, pulpy entertainment. So, what was your? I don't think you mentioned. What was your theater reaction like? And were there other people there? I know sometimes you do the afternoon showings.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did another 5 p.m. showing. And although it's not at the level Ant-Man was, it wasn't that bad. I believe there was like 10 other people in there along with me, which is more than average for a 5 p.m. when I go to like these things.
Okay.
Um, the one litmus test for me was that I had what seemed like a younger couple on my row. And just based on the things that they will laugh at the trailers that we're showing,
Huh.
that was a litmus test for me. I'm like,
Oh
okay,
no.
they seem no, they seem to be like on the same wavelength as I am.
Cool.
So
Okay.
I want to see if they react the same way I do. But then there was a group of four in front of me, and you could obviously tell one was the mom, and two of them were her kids, and I think a kid and one of the friends of the kids, like that. So I'm like, okay, I need to figure out how they react to it, right? And to my surprise and amusement, the kids didn't seem to like it as much. The
Huh.
mom was eating it up. She
But
like
Mom was stoned
especially
for sure.
oh
She's sitting
had
there
to
getting to
have
a movie
been.
at 5 p.m. She's not on
Yeah.
her day job that day. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Like especially all the bear moments, like when the bear was just in full on cocaine mode, she was like laughing up a storm and all that. The couple next to me, we were like on the same wavelength 100%.
Love that.
Yeah, we were laughing at the same moments, even like some of like the weirder moments where you just hear a one line dialogue in the background, and we caught it and we would laugh at that, like. And there were a lot of those things where it just be like a quick innuendo or something you see in the background. Like there's this one part where it happens twice in the movie, where there's a payphone and there's a sign in the payphone, like there's a sign like in the back, like a billboard, and the tagline on the sign said the original glory hole.
Yep.
And I
Somebody had to
just
point
kept,
that out, and when they said it out
yeah.
loud, the theater cracked up.
Oh my
Yes.
god! Every time that would like pop up, I would die laughing because it's just so absurd. But it's also something that you would find if you took a road trip down to Georgia. So yeah, so the majority of the audience I was with was in on the joke. They were in on it for like the full ride, with the exception of some here and there. And I think the younger generation could be hit or miss with this one because of expectations, I think. um but I think for like my generation, your generation, like that, because I no longer consider you to be the younger generation. You're like a way past that, like the TikTok generation. Like
Right.
you're a little past that. I feel like our generations would get into it because we know what we're getting into. We know just based on the trailer alone, it's an absurd type of movie, right?
Well, they're
We're not
kind of
looking for
satirizing movies that
right.
have been popular
Yeah.
and that are more from the past.
Yeah.
But and also like I think if you're a younger person, maybe on the ADHD burnout of TikTok random
Sure.
silliness and raised on vines and whatever, there isn't that many like laughs per minute and silly wild. Like that's not the most
Hmm.
ridiculous thing you've seen today. It might not be the top 100 most ridiculous videos you've seen that
Yeah.
day if you're just blasting through TikTok. But so maybe there is something there. Maybe that was just a small sample size with those two
Could be.
kids.
Yeah.
I do know that similar situation. All the people in my group around us were similar. Like I don't even know how to describe them, but like beer belly, popcorn eating, middle aged professionals, and
Yeah.
they were like half burned out and like fully into it, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think this
I'm
is a
I'm cutting out,
movie.
so I'm gonna let
Oh,
you.
sure.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm,
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you take over for a second.
Yeah. Yeah. No problem. I do also feel like because of that, that this is the perfect movie if you're looking to go this weekend or any weekend while this movie is out and experience it with a crowd and kind of have that laugh out loud moments that like you remember having when you went to the theaters back in the day. Because I know there's still a lot of people not going to theaters, but it is definitely a crowd pleasing movie. If the crowd is in on the joke, they're in for the absurdity of it all. Another thing that I like to kind of throw back on, and it kind of there were moments in this movie that kind of harken back on it, was the Naked Gun movies. If you remember the type of comedy in the Naked Gun movies, it always had like those innuendo type of jokes or those like little quips that will like get you laughing in the background. Even though Naked Gun, that's all it was, where it was just like an abundance of that. Here you'll have snippets. Like there's this one great line where the guy says to this lady ranger, like, "Oh, your beaver is very dusty," and she's like, "Yeah, well, I'm kind of working on that right now." If you don't get it, then that's easily going to pass you by. It's going to fly over your head. I felt like the adults in the audience I was with totally got that joke and we were laughing, while the kids not so much, right? But I get that. I mean, the term beaver used for anything sexual is not a common thing anymore. I don't know if you heard me we
Yeah,
say
I was definitely able to listen. It reminded
yeah.
me. I recently watched Robin Hood Men in Tights, which I've seen a lot of Mel Brooks.
Yeah.
Definitely those exact same type of jokes. And I
Hmm.
also recently watched the other Monty Python movie, Life of Brian.
Oh
It's
yeah, yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
it's more that era of corny, silly
Yeah.
nonsense, double like puns. I
Yeah.
do think that that's maybe more of like I don't even know. It's not like a more mature sense of humor. It's almost dumber or something, or like
Right. Right.
less nuanced. I don't know, but yeah, I know that the audience that I had appreciated the hell out of those. So
Which is
uh,
great. Yeah.
Yeah, that this movie had a lot of that at moments, and I think it could have done more silly,
Sure.
ridiculous jokes, because there's again some of them just didn't land, and I think I was
Mhm.
like, I think that was supposed to be properly funny.
Right.
Um, but also, you're trying to show characters who are stressed out. A couple of them are on a difficult mission, which is go through the forest, comb it for bag of cocaine, don't let anyone find out you're there. That's going to be a very stressful day. A couple
Yeah.
of the characters have had the worst day in the history of ever. That's always fun and funny to watch. But
Mhm.
it's also hard to show on screen with a laugh a minute
Yeah.
because you're having to show them being stressed out and just having walking for miles look
Mhm.
like it, he did a pretty good job at that for sure. Yeah.
No,
There were more
absolutely.
laughs and laugh out loud moments than I thought there would be going into it.
Yeah. Like, and that's I love that you said that too because I didn't expect myself to laugh as much as I did watching this movie. It also helps that if you keep your expectations pretty low on this movie. I mean, again, you watch the trailer, you kind of get a sense of what you're getting into. But if you're going to this movie expecting a full blown story with a major plot and all that, this is not the movie for you. If you're going to this movie just because you want to see a bear go nuts and do a lot of cocaine, then yeah, you get that and then some, right? And it's just, I feel like all the added stuff surrounding those moments are just bonus at that point, you know. And you're right, it's not a perfect movie because they do introduce a lot of these like little side stories and characterization moments and personalities that really don't matter at the end of the day. But I guess in a way it kind of, how am I going to make a movie? You have to kind of give some sort of credence to who these people are and why they're there in the first place, right? And kind of their whole, goal and missions that gives you something to kind of root for, I guess, instead of rooting for the bear just to be bear high on cocaine. But yeah, but like I said, it worked for me on so many levels. But did we already mentioned that this takes place in the 80s, right? Like in the
Yeah.
80s. Like so you hear the soundtrack, you saw the fashion and all that stuff like that. What is something from the 80s that you really like? If you were to like call out something from something or 90s cuz I feel like you're more of a 90s guy, right?
More of a nice kid. I'm for me, 80s is Ferris Bueller is the top
Okay.
cultural
Nice.
export
Yeah.
of the 1980s. I don't know. What about you?
I guess because of me, it's cartoons, So like
Okay.
I'm major into like Transformers, Thundercats, all that stuff like that, and a great way to show your love and appreciation for stuff nostalgic in the 80s, 90s, or even 2000s is wear a shirt. And I think a lot of people have always asked me like, "Hey, where do you get your great shirts from?" Well, let me introduce you to this place where I do get some of my shirts from. Remember the good old days? The days of big hair, neon colors, scrunchies, Jinko jeans, and iconic movies and TV shows? At 80stees.com, they know how much you miss the 80s, the 90s, and all of the other E's. That's why they created a collection of the coolest, most iconic t-shirts from those eras. Their t-shirts aren't just nostalgic, they're also high quality, comfortable, and stylish. Whether you're a fan of classic 80s movies like The Breakfast Club or Ghostbusters, or just want to show your love for your favorite 90s TV shows like Friends or Baywatch, they've got you covered. You know what? I do like it when they call me Big Papa, so I'm gonna have to really pick this up right now. SWAT Cats? Wow, who remembers SWAT Cats? And it's not just movies and TV shows, but you can rep the memories of your favorite brands, books, and video games. It's also not just shirts. You can also get all of your favorite memories on hoodies, jerseys, and more. At 80cs.com, they understand the power of nostalgia. That's why they created a shopping experience that takes you back to the decades you love. Browse their collection of unique, eye-catching apparel that will make you feel like you're reliving those iconic moments. For a limited time, they're currently running a special buy one, get one free for those of you who decide to act right now. Plus, they offer free worldwide shipping for orders over $100. That's right, buy one, get one free, and free worldwide shipping for orders over $100. So what are you waiting for? Click on the link found in the description to visit 80stees.com today and find your perfect nostalgic fit. Yeah, so grab yourself something fun and nostalgic, something that you could wear and be proud of. And again, anytime you purchase something through one of the advertisers, you're getting something cool for yourself, but at the same time, you're supporting us so that we can continue doing what we do because we love what we do. So thank you once again for all your support there. But let's talk about some of the performances here in the movie. I think it's worth mentioning because although there wasn't major big stars, there are a lot of people that we do know and that we've seen and all that. And I think we should start off by talking about Ray Liotta because I do believe this is one of his last movies that
I
he
heard
actually filmed.
last.
Last,
It's
okay,
hard to say that for sure, but
yeah,
that's the line, one of the lines when you're hearing press about this movie.
yeah.
Are we in spoiler territory, or are we saving that?
Yes, let's go ahead and dive into spoiler stuff now. I mean,
Yeah,
I again, I don't think we revealed anything that would upset people earlier on, but now is the
I don't even
time
know
that
that we
we're
will, but sure,
yeah,
just to be
yeah,
safe.
yeah. But yeah.
I This is one of the things I did not like about the movie is the send off of Ray Liotta. There's
Mm,
a version where they do what they did, and I was kind of wondering, like, I'm watching the movie going, how are you going to kill off this character? He's the bad
yeah,
guy. You basically have to, or you can have him right off in the sunset or back of a cop car or something. There's different ways to handle it, but if they didn't know he was going to pass away, which is my understanding, it'd be difficult to recut the movie in just such a way. We also know that we've got some tricks with either deceased actors or look-alike stand-ins. I did not like the way that they handled that.
mm,
So to me, that's the most interesting part of the Ray Liotta. His character overall, fantastic,
yeah,
perfect. I could have had a lot more of him, honestly. If he was the main character, human character of this movie, I probably would have liked it even more. Instead,
yeah,
he's more of an ancillary background. Maybe they couldn't get him in for the whole thing. Who knows? But every time he showed up, it was awesome, and he was just doing Ray Liotta stuff, full mode, to a comedic effect.
hmm,
Dialogue was a lot of those standard bad guy lines, but he did a little extra, put a little sauce on it. That was
yeah.
fun to watch. He can do that. He's among the best at it. I thought either they're going to give him a super gnarly kill, but I was thinking like you can't do that to someone when we're grieving them, and like I'm trying to imagine like his family at this movie. I don't know.
Hmm.
I thought there's where the waterfall. Maybe he'll get kind of pushed in, and he'll like fall away and something a little more majestic.
Hmm.
There's one where he's in the back of a cop car. There's one where you even play with some of his famous film roles or his type of character that he's had, right? So like him getting pushed into the back of a cop car. There's a way to do that without actually having really. It wasn't that. It was literally watching his intestines getting pulled out by a bear. And it almost made me think, like, was he an asshole on this movie set? Like, are they fucking with him to where he was such an asshole? They're like, oh, screw that guy. We're going to even play with his dead body. I don't know. Obviously, like, that's full conjecture. But what in the world? I couldn't believe I was watching an actor who's properly dead getting not only killed on screen, but
Yeah,
just gutted, literally. That was a little hard to watch. Other than that, as far as the use of him up until that moment, I thought it was
yeah.
brilliant, solid, kind of cameo, but a little more than a cameo. Like three different moments he pops in and just steals the scene.
Right. Yeah. No, I think honestly, I think if they were to ask him, okay, how would you like to go? If they gave him the option of, well, you could gracefully die by being swept away by the waterfall, or you could have your guts ripped out of you. I'm pretty sure he would say, I want my guts ripped the hell out of me.
Make it real as hell.
Yeah. And I'll
You know how
sell
I
it.
am.
I'll sell it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, I'll still be breathing and looking at them doing it, and all that stuff like that.
Where he goes, I hated this fucking experience. I don't want to be part of the sequel, no matter what. Which we'll get to theories and sequel stuff a little later because this movie was so deep.
Yeah.
Um, But I could almost even be like, please, you have to kill my character in such a way it is impossible I can come back to life. Because we do see
Right.
some false deaths in this movie. We definitely see
Oh, yeah.
a bear looks like it's dead or knocked out, or they're asking, and then it gets a little more cocaine and keeps going. It happens to the bear at least
Yeah.
twice.
Yeah, and again, it's like they give the bear like these supernatural kind of instincts and abilities, and that's why it really like goes right up there with like I said, like the Jurassic Parks. You've before we recorded, you mentioned stuff like Piranha, Sharknado, all that stuff like that, like very
The Mag,
absurd.
a recent
Oh
one,
yeah,
yeah.
the Meg, Lake
The
Placid is another
absurd
good one. Yeah,
animal. It's kind of like the natural disaster, earthquake, volcano
right.
movies, but instead it's an animal wreaking havoc. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny how it's just like because this bear is just so addicted to coke at this point that anytime it catches a whiff of it, wakes to life and just like, yeah, give me some of that, baby. And it just goes nuts, right? Which is again another thing I loved about the movie. It's just so funny. But yeah, so Leota there, Kerry Russell was okay. Like I said, I do agree with you too. Like there was no real reason to show like or to harp on the okay, well, I'm kind of seeing the doctor, but not, and this and that, and whatever the case is. The kids were fine. I thought. By the way, having a name of Brooklyn Prince, I mean, that is like for some people will find that extremely adorable, like I do. But I could totally see some people like, who the fuck does she think she is? Like
Who? What are you saying?
the the little girl, the actress's name is Brooklyn Prince. That's her
Oh,
name. Yeah.
so the
I
dog's
find it
name was New York and Paris, or one's name was New York and one's name was Paris, something like that. Brooklyn Prince. Okay, I understand
yeah.
you're mad at this child for how it was named. That's very
Not
what a
me. I'm,
great
I'm just
take.
saying. I'm sure there are people out there who'd be like, "Who the fuck does she think she is?" Like
Not
that.
me,
Now, I
but
mean, I find
many
it
people are telling.
adorable.
A lot of people are saying people are talking about it. All
I
right.
find it
Okay.
adorable. Her and Christian Convery, who play the two young kids. Um,
Good job.
w- Great job. I wasn't expecting
Fantastic.
them to actually take the coat.
That was funny for sure. And
Yeah.
it's kind of like they're doing the thing where like little kids say the darndest things, and you
Right.
see that. These could be two stars of a Spielberg '80s movie for
Oh,
sure.
absolutely.
They were fantastic in my
Absolutely.
opinion, like
Yeah.
among the best. And this is a really good cast.
Yeah.
Um, one of my favorites though is from the very beginning, Matthew Rhys, who's Kerry Russell's co-star in The Americans,
Yeah. Hmm.
the TV show. I'm going, oh, this is Matthew Rhys. He's going to be. I didn't realize he was a star of this movie. He goes full send, poked out of his mind, jumps out of an
Dude,
airplane.
the karate.
Yeah, it was really great stuff. Bonks his head, and then he just dies. So he gets about
Yeah.
3 minutes of screen time,
Yeah.
maybe no less. Brilliant work. I do like it when they have someone who's a star that meets an early demise because it just lets you know
Yeah.
like anything could happen in this movie. That was a
Yeah.
fun one for sure.
And
Isaiah
also,
Whitlock Jr., very
yeah, I
famous
also
from The Wire, did a great job.
sure. Yeah,
And
I think to go back just real quick on the Matthew Reese death, that also sets the perfect tone for the kind of comedy you're gonna get throughout
for
the
sure.
film. Like if that didn't get you, then I think you're in for a world of hurt with this movie because when that moment happened and it just kind of like cut to like the title screen, everyone in the theater was dying at that point because it's just so unexpected, right? And it was just like really, really hilarious. But yeah, no, sorry, go on.
And we don't. We're not going to do play by play of this entire movie. I
No,
think it is what it is. But I do love that right when they go to the title, it starts with a quote about how the strategy for fighting a bear, essentially.
yeah, like brown bears, you play dead. Black bears,
And
you have
then
to fight back and all that. Yeah.
it says source Wikipedia.
Wikipedia.
I was like, okay, that's exactly what kind of movie we're getting into.
Oh yeah.
A couple other actors like Alden Ehrenreich, great job. I like it when
Yeah.
someone who kind of, especially if they're in a weird spot in their career after what happened with Solo. Honestly, I
Yeah.
loved Solo. Don't come at me
I
in the
thought it was
car.
good.
Actually, come
I
at
thought it was
me.
okay.
I loved it. That was
I thought it
great.
was okay. Yeah.
I don't know why it could have ended his career, but it is in that narrative though. When someone does kind of have to like eat shit for a role or whatever, this was a
Yeah.
great version of that. O'Shea Jackson Jr. solid. I could watch him do these kinds of movies all the time. I don't know if he has it in him to be a great actor,
Hmm.
but whatever this version of his career is, I'm happy with it for sure. Which isn't too different than what his dad's has been doing, the last 20 years or so.
I was gonna
Um,
say like he's mimicking his career because he already has the looks. I mean, he looks
oh,
just like
and
fucking
yeah, you're
Ice
right.
Cube.
Anaconda is one of these
Yeah.
too. It
Yeah.
was a different tone for sure. But I think we're talking about the comedy and the performers. Elizabeth Banks is the director of this movie, and
Yeah.
Elizabeth Banks, awesome comedy actress, has done uh, Wet Hot American Summer, 40-Year-Old Virgins, like really solid comic timing. Anytime I see her in a comedy, I go, okay, there's at least going to be the jokes will be well delivered.
Yeah.
I think this movie definitely had that. There were solid jokes, and the way it was cut and the way the lines were delivered. It definitely, I even heard her style in a few
Mhm.
different moments for sure. But I think this is her third movie to direct. I do know for sure she directed Pitch Perfect 2
Yep.
and the most recent Charlie's Angels movies.
Yeah.
But it kind of tells me, which is interesting, because like I could see a version of her career where she's going full, she's going to be a great comedy director. I'm not sure if that's what we're getting. We've gotten more middling stuff, and this isn't
Yes.
so far above that fray that it'll stand out. Pitch Perfect 2, solid. Charlie's Angels, the most recent one, I actually enjoyed it. A lot of people shit on it. I thought it was entertaining. It was what it was. And then similar with this movie, I think so far we have like movies that are what they are, kind of pulpy genre fare.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what happens with her career, but I do think that she gets credit for what this movie is good at. I'm glad it was given. Like even when I saw her name, I was like, wait, why is? How does it make sense that she's Drake? I liked the timing in this movie for
Mhm.
almost all the jokes. Like that is how you make this movie good. Kind of similar with the other ones, where Pitch Perfect 2 is in its own way an action movie, but instead of action fight scenes, you have a cappella fight scenes. And then Charlie's Angels action trying to be a comedy. She was solid at it in my mind, but I'm curious. I would love it if this movie was secretly goes on a huge box office run and is a cult favorite or beyond, where it actually makes
Mhm.
enough money. She gets to do maybe something bigger. I'm not sure, but her career is interesting to me. I'm curious what's next for her. But
Yeah.
overall, the personnel involved, they have credentials. It's a solid cast and crew for sure.
Yeah, I think a lot of eyes were on this movie because of her career as a director. Because she's been getting a lot of criticism of her trajectory so far. You know, with Pitch Perfect 2, it makes sense because she was in the first one and then she wanted to take a stab at the second one. So that was kind of like her directorial debut right there, you know. And it was a box office success, obviously, because everyone loved the first Pitch Perfect, right? Charlie's Angels was considered to be a massive bomb and a miss.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were just like, "Oh, I don't know about her right now." You know, again, it's the whole "What have you done for me lately" kind of mentality in
Yeah.
Hollywood. I think this, although I don't think it's going to be a huge box office smash, especially with so much stuff coming in the next couple of weeks,
Whew.
I think it's going to have a lot of legs once it hits streaming. And I think
Yeah.
that's when you're going to get a lot of people who are going to be like, you know what, this movie is fun. You know, if you want to get a group together, have a movie night, like this is the perfect film for that. So I think people are going to be talking about it more so once it hits streaming. And then that will give her the opportunity to do something eventually later on down the line.
I do think that is one of the flaws of this movie is, like we said, go see it opening weekend when there's a crowd. Definitely go with a
Yeah.
group of friends or at least a friend if you can, because it'll be play better that way. The streaming numbers might be hurt because this is a slumber party movie, if you
Yep.
will, or a
Hmm.
boys' night or a Halloween movie night. Like you got the group together. Let's put
Hmm.
on something wild and wacky. That kind of reduces your numbers because if you see it in groups of five and no one watches it a second time, you get a
Yeah.
fifth of the numbers, right? That's of
Right.
course not going to
Right.
be everybody, but it is funny how that kind of movie can sometimes be less successful if it's not a highly rewatchable movie. I don't
Yeah.
know how quickly I'm going to like really care to rewatch it. The only reason would be essentially that exact scenario. I
Hmm.
go, oh, you guys haven't seen it? Well, that's a good one. That's fine.
Yeah.
That we'll have a wild, wacky time in our home viewing experience.
Hmm.
But you're right. If someone's going to go to a random movie in the last couple weeks, Ant Man, Quantumania, if they're going to go to a random movie the next couple weeks, probably be Creed 3. There's a few other like solid choices out there.
Yeah.
I hope it's successful. I honestly do.
Yeah. It'll be nice if it was. I mean, it'll be a great story for the cast involved, for her career moving forward and all that. But yeah, it's gonna be tough. Like it's like literally we're gonna start getting into the summer box office season because it gets earlier and earlier every year. And with Creed 3, I think that's really gonna kick things off. So unfortunately, this will drop off, but it's a great alternative. Like if you're not into Creed 3, if you're not into Ant-Man, right? oh, let's watch Cocaine Bear. It's something different,
Yep.
right?
It's at
So,
least original, which is hard to find
right.
these days. And now it is based off of a news clipping, I
Sure.
understand,
Yeah.
but pretty loosely based off of that.
No, for
And
sure.
also, it has a source, a Wikipedia quote in the beginning of the movie. At the
Yeah.
end, it said something along the lines of, this day, not all of it's been found. And my understanding is like we think it has, but technically you never know, I guess, maybe. I don't know if they
Hmm.
accounted for it all before, whatever. I really hope that there's cocaine squirrel, cocaine raccoon, cocaine pan. Like, oh, a tiger got out of the zoo the next day over, and then it found the next bag of cocaine. Like, just something like that. I found this entertaining enough, and if it were to be even more silly and ridiculous, actually think
Yeah.
I'd like that more. This movie could have almost had more absurdity than it already did. It
Right.
has some jump scares, and it kind of goes like not quite horror, but like grisly, gruesome
Hmm.
violence for sure. And there's moments where it is a jump scare. The bear kind of like sneaks up from out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I think this could have been just dumber and less trying to be like a successful in other ways, right? It could have just been straight comedy
Hmm.
ridiculousness, and I think it would have been even more fun that way. But if we get, because it happens near the end of the movie, we see the dude's got the bag of cocaine. He's in the back of a truck, and there's animals there, and he's like, "Oh wait," and grabs it so that I guess they don't get into it. But there's a
Yeah.
version of the movie where the next one is 20 rams or whatever animal that was, who all get into goats, maybe who all get into cocaine and just go on a rampage through a big city. Something I don't know.
I'm hoping now that a lot of these kind of classic stories are becoming public domain. You know, that's why you're seeing your Winnie the Pooh horror movie, your How the Grinch Stole Christmas. I'm looking for cocaine Bambi, like Bambi cocaine,
Oh, that's
like
great. That's a
you know,
great idea
yeah,
for
because
sure.
I think
Well, we
yeah.
do know Thumper doesn't need it. We know Thumper was
Oh,
on the white. Yeah.
but if it did have some, if Thumper did get
Oh
some, oh,
boy.
forget it. The
Okay.
mischief that can ensue after that.
It's
It'll
over.
be yeah.
It becomes the Were Rabbit from Monty Python.
That's it. That's it. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I to piggyback off of what you just mentioned about at the end, the guy who hitches the ride and grabs the bag, he ended up becoming my favorite character in the whole movie.
Solid. So
Oh my
good.
god. The actor's name is Aaron Holiday. Um, I haven't recognized him from anything. I think this is the first time I've seen him, or maybe I've seen him before. I'm not sure, but his because he started off as part of like the group of bad kids in the area, right? Who like robs people and all that stuff like that.
1980s generic hooligans. Yeah.
Right. And then his complete like 180 into like this kind of like uh like a listening body, someone who who's very spiritual and gives advice to Alden Ehrenreich's character about relationships. And he's kind of like this like very sweet innocent kid who's just like trying just to do good and all that. It's so endearing and so hilarious for me. I really really loved his character a lot. It just I wasn't expecting to, but I was like, you know what? If I were to pick one character that I really liked the most, it was his for sure.
Absolutely. Even the cast running out, the EMTs did a solid job. Everyone kind of came to
Yeah.
play for this one. I think it might be there's something that you see sometimes with when actors become directors,
Hmm.
and maybe they just know how to work with actors or how
Yeah.
to set up a good set. I could see that. And also, you get to make the calls to your buddies, and I wouldn't be shocked if that's how some of these casting decisions get made. Is, oh, Elizabeth, you're making a movie. I loved working with you on this
Right.
thing. I'll work with you on that thing. But
No,
yeah, I
definitely.
overall like everyone played their part and did a pretty damn good job for
Yeah,
sure.
for sure. Yeah, definitely. I agree there. So it's obvious that both you and I we love this movie. So let's talk about favorite moment. So obviously there's a moment in the movie that I'm sure you were like, you know what? This is the moment. This is like the best moment for me. That's why I love this movie so much. Or if it was the opposite, like what was the moment that just like, you know what? This ain't for me at all. What was that moment for you?
What's interesting, it's not even a bear moment, which we can get into like
Yeah.
favorite bear moment if you want. But my actual favorite moment from the movie is O'Shea Jackson Jr.'s fight scene in the bathroom. Something about watching these three jerky crust punks
uh,
trying to rob him, and they have a knife, and he just hucks them up in such a way that it was believable enough, but also
Hmm.
absurd, just how poorly they did. And then
Yeah.
one of them comes to and they're trying to get information about where they hid the cocaine. And he's going like, "Do you really want to mess with me? Did you see what I just did in 30 seconds to all three of you?" That was a favorite. And then there's the moment too, we see it in a lot of like comedy
Yeah.
action movies now, where he looks back and goes, "Oh, there's just a knife sticking out of him." It was pretty
Yeah.
gnarly. That was kind of an example though of it doing other things other than just
Hmm.
absurd comedy, because it wasn't that funny. But as far as just watching someone get fucked up, I generally enjoyed that more than some of the bear scenes, because there's ones where the person's just gets like swiped by the bear or chomped, and it didn't,
Yeah.
maybe because of the CGI difficulty of it all, it didn't show a lot of
Hmm.
air violence, because it was either so fast or you just kind of hear it or see it, or it's messes them up in such a way it just makes quick work of the person. Most of the time you're actually seeing the bear is when it's slowly walking from one place to another, or it's engaged and it's about to attack. So
Yeah.
as far as like actual violent, over the top moments, I really enjoyed the bathroom fight scene for sure.
Nice. Yeah, and
What
I
about what?
also I also like the running joke he had about his jersey. It's like, damn, this is my favorite jersey.
Yeah,
And then he calls back to it
one of
again
the biggest
later.
laughs. Yeah,
Yeah.
one of the biggest laughs from the audience. After he gets stabbed, his biggest concern is what happened to
Yeah.
his jersey.
Yeah. And then
So
later on,
good.
when he gets his fingers shot off, he's wrapping his hand with the jersey. He's like, damn, I really like this jersey. It's so crazy. For me, like the my favorite moment that kind of helped me appreciate this movie early on, I think really was the Icelandic couple as they're having their conversation,
So good.
because the things that they would talk about and their mannerisms too, it's very Icelandic, by the way. It is Icelandic people are very like that. Even though they could be having an argument, they're also very polite to each other, which is really hilarious. But it was so funny. I love that couple so much that I really wish they could do like a small spin-off or a prequel, just seeing their journey to America. I think that
Yeah.
would be hilarious. And they're talking about their what would they name their kid. If they had a son, it will be named Texas. You know, it's just so silly. But as far as like bear moment, I would have to say it is that moment when the bear was chasing the ambulance, and
Uh, you're right. That it is. That's
this
number one.
oh my god, this poor park ranger, the actress name is Margot Martindale. She already had her ass like chewed off, basically, and she's like trying to survive this major bear attack and everything. And the ambulance comes, puts her in the gurney, like straps her down, and the bear basically attacks the ambulance, gets in the ambulance, and the poor woman strapped in this gurney goes flying out the back of the ambulance and just
Oh,
lands face first on the concrete,
and her face
skidding
peels.
away. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the roughest things to look at. Where you're so,
Yeah,
yeah,
but I love like
yeah.
the slow motion of her like kind of flying out the back of the ambulance, and you knew nothing good was going to come out of this. That was the loudest time I laughed out loud when that happened, because again, it was so absurd that I was just all in. The couple next to me was dying during that moment. I think the mom in front of me was just like, "Oh my god!" She goes like she kind of screamed out like that. There was a security guard that would often come into the theater just to watch the movie because there was nothing else to do.
Love
And
it.
he heard me laugh out loud, and I saw him look at me with a giant smile on his face because he's laughing too. He was like, "Yeah, dude, this is crazy." So yeah,
Awesome.
that was like the moment for me, that I couldn't resist but laughing out loud for sure.
Not to harp on it too much, because that you're right. That's the number one bear moment for sure. Maybe even moment
Hmm.
overall. But that's another example of Margot Martindale, of a solid supporting
Oh yeah,
or character
yeah,
actress. We've seen do amazing work, like August Osage County, like
yep,
serious plays. We've seen her do absurd parody, like Walk Hard, Dewey Cox.
yep.
Like, if you go through her credits, because you recognize it here, and there's some that you might have like, oh, that's a favorite moment, or oh, that's that character from 10 years ago that I really loved.
Hmm.
It's amazing, and that's just another example of fantastic. Someone doing exactly what they need to do,
For
and
sure.
then especially the people who are jerks in this movie. There's not really. I was teasing earlier when I said that there's some big plot. There's some depth to it some big theory. But one of my favorite things in movies like this is if you're a jerk, you usually get a worse kill than the other people
Yeah.
who were nice who might survive,
Right.
basically. And we definitely see that with Ray Liotta's character and hers. I think those are the two most gruesome deaths.
Hmm.
Um, the only other one I'll shout out real quick is boy climbs up the tree. He goes, "Bears can't climb trees," and they're
Right.
no, they absolutely can. We see the bear go after him, and then while the other park ranger, who's also kind of a jerkwad, accidentally does a whole bunch of cocaine. The bear
Right.
smells it on him, and then immediately just jump, bow, 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 goes right for the dude and tears him up. That was another fun, shocking, wild kill for sure.
Yeah, and if we're talking about actors that we recognize, I mean, Jesse Tyler Ferguson from Modern
I didn't
Family.
even recognize him in this one.
Yeah.
Not necessarily that it was the best acting in the world, but just like the
No.
costuming was so
Yeah.
1980s ridiculousness. Great work with that character. When I went through the cast after, I go, "Oh, holy shit, that's who that was."
Yeah. Yeah, and that's again, that's the charm of this movie too. It's like there's a bunch of actors that you've seen, you've seen, and all that. But they're so good in their roles in this movie that they're so easily. It's hard for you sometimes to pinpoint who they are. But then when you realize at the end of the day, you're like, oh my god, like I remember this guy, that guy, whatever. Like the Game of Thrones
Yep.
dude, that didn't hit me
Yep.
until like when he shows up again later in the movie to help out the mom and to get them to the cave. Then when I saw his face again, I was like, wait a minute, I know this guy from somewhere. And I was like, it's the Game of Thrones dude. So yeah, so again, overall, I think we just really enjoyed this movie. It's like I said before, it's one of those movies that if you know what you're getting yourself into and you're in the proper mindset for that, then you're gonna really love this movie. If you're not, then you're probably gonna really end up hating this movie or just not getting it. You're like, oh, I don't get why they made this a movie or whatever the case is. I think you mentioned it already before. Your letterbox rating for this was
4. Yeah, I was entertained, and
yeah,
just to clarify a little,
yeah,
I judge movies based on what they're trying to be, and so like the for what it was a 4 out of 5. I think maybe even higher. Like my
yeah,
buddy I went with gave it 5 out of 5 because it was just so good at being that type of movie.
yeah,
But I kind of I'll take into consideration like I'm probably never going to give a movie like this a perfect 5.
sure,
But it's not trying to be The Godfather Part Two, right? Like we judge it on its own terms, and I definitely enjoyed it on those terms pretty highly. Definitely better than I thought I would. So 4 out of
yeah.
5.
Nice. Yeah, no, I myself gave it 4 stars because again, I was not expecting to like it as much as I did.
Okay.
And I think the main surprise to me was how much I laughed throughout the whole thing. And it once it got me that way, I knew I was gonna like this movie. So definitely give it 4. It's not the best. I mean, 5 is like I reserve those for like on the waterfront, like All Quiet on the Western Front. Like
Sure.
that was a 5 for me. But this was definitely a 4, and I definitely liked it for sure.
If someone loves this genre, because I think you have more experience with this genre than I do,
Hmm.
I think it's a 4.5 if you just say just this
Sure.
genre,
Yeah.
maybe. Does that sound about right to you?
Yeah, that sounds about right. Like if
To
you
compare it
like
to the
if
Meg or any of those
yeah,
silly animal, absurd 80 whatever. I don't even know what kind of movie quite you call it, but we know exactly what we're talking about. When we see the cocaine bear trailer, we go, "Oh, that's what they're going for." Okay, got it. Snakes on
yeah.
a plane.
Yeah, like yeah, if you lump it in with those movies like you said, Meg, Snakes on a Plane, Anaconda, Lake Placid, all that stuff like that, this is definitely one of the better ones for sure in that
Yep.
category. So if you are familiar with all those movies, you went to see all those movies, that's the proper expectation when you go into a movie like this. It's like think of those movies, but you are probably going to walk out of this saying like, you know what, this was actually a lot better than I thought it was. And if not, we want to know why. So let us know in the comments if you've seen this movie. What were your thoughts? How were you feeling about it overall? How does it compare to those other movies that we've mentioned? If you didn't like it, let us know why you didn't like it as well. We would love to hear all the reasons behind that for sure. But yeah, no, this was great talking about this movie. I'm glad we got to see it. And I'm glad that we got
Oh
this
yeah.
now because if this came out later, I think it would have been easily buried with all the stuff that's coming out in the next couple of months. So it's
You
a
say
perfect
bear eat?
buried.
Yeah.
Hey. We didn't have enough of those this episode. Not
I
enough
know.
bear
I
puns.
said yeah, grizzly. Buried. You had one earlier
Bare
on.
necessities. Yeah.
Gosh, yeah, okay. That as soon as you did that, I was like, I'm not even competing in this one. I was so put off by the fun of it all. Um, that said, if you like, this is the absolute last thought I have. If you
Yeah.
are a bear who's done cocaine and is on cocaine right
Oh
now,
yeah.
leave a comment. I want to see what
Please.
your thoughts were about this movie.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it accurately reflected your experience? And just like let us know your ideas on the world in general and how you're feeling
Yeah.
right now. Yeah.
And if they were to approach you for a sequel, would you be open to being part of that movie? Like, we would love to know. Let's hear from the cocaine loving bear community, because there's a community for everything, and I'm sure there's one out there. So we support you guys. We want to hear from you guys. Let us know for sure your thoughts and everything, and if you hope for future iterations of the Cocaine Bear saga. With that being said, that has been our episode of Movie Time. Thank you so much for tuning in. Before we start heading out, Blake, where can people find you on the interwebs?
You can find me on Letterboxd. The username is last name Wolf. Common spelling, no punctuation. My last name is Wolf. If there was a Cocaine Wolf movie, just to answer the question, I think I would 100% be okay with that. But yeah, that's where you can find me and where I gave this movie 4 stars on Letterboxd.
Nice, nice. As for me, like always, you could find me on Twitter, Instagram, most importantly, here on YouTube, Lowkey Geek. You see the handle on the screen. Again, if you haven't done so yet, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, so that you could support the community, support the channel, and get notified every time a new video is uploaded by hitting that notification bell. If you're looking for an audio version of this episode and many others, just search Lowkey Geek on your podcast platform of choice, where you can download this and all the other stuff we have up there. And of course, leave a great rating if it prompts you to. And as always, if you are inclined and in a position to help support the channel, check out some of our advertisers and affiliates in the description. Anytime you do that, you help support us by also supporting yourself by getting something you'll probably end up liking for yourself as well. So definitely do that. We appreciate all the support and love that we'll be getting. But this has been Movie Time. I've been Rene. That's been Blake. Stay cool, stay classy, stay safe, and stay sane. And we'll catch you all in the next one. All right. Peace out, everybody.